Hey y'all, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're a returning viewer. I'm Maisie, and this is Maisie with a Z, and today, for the fourth day of Bookmas, I'm going to be seeing what the best and worst books I read this year were according to Goodreads. Goodreads ratings are weird, because sometimes I very much agree with them, sometimes I don't. But also, I'd say it's probably usually more in the middle range, where I disagree with the Goodreads averages, so for like extremely low rated Goodreads books, extremely high rated Goodreads books, I'm probably gonna agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see when I pull this up. So let me go to Goodreads. I've got my computer here. Okay, and we are on Goodreads. Let's go to my books, and then my read in 2023 tag. I think this is currently filtered by date added. Yeah, so let's go to average rating, and we'll see what comes up. First up, we've got okay, we start at the lowest ratings, and the first one is Making Conversation, which I read for a video I did reading the highest and lowest rated books on my TBR according to Goodreads, so it makes sense this is here. And I agree, this just was not great. Let me double check what I gave it on Storygraph. So I gave it 2.5 stars on Storygraph, rounded up to 3 for Goodreads, and this just was not great. It's a Persephone Books edition, which they try and publish forgotten classics that have gone out of print, mainly by women authors of the 20th century. The other Persephone books I've read, which was, The Fortnight in September, was amazing. I gave it 5 stars. This was not good. I just didn't understand it. It was needlessly racist at points. The plot was bad. The protagonist was unlikable. I just did not. It was so weirdly tossed together, and there's an extent to which I would almost have assumed it was just me and I just didn't get it, except for the fact that everyone else seems to have hated it too. It was just not great. You can check out my vlog reading this if you want to hear more about my thoughts, because I had a lot. And then the next two are both books I read arcs of. First is A Crown of Ivy and Glass. This one I gave 3.5 stars on Storygraph, and it was okay. I didn't think it was as there were a lot of not great reviews for this book. I thought it was pretty decent for what it was, which is romantasy. My main complaint about it was way too long for what it was. And it's also trying, I don't know, it feels a lot like it's trying to go for Sarah J Maas vibes, and it's not really succeeding. But I thought it was decent. I did not think it was horrible. I would not say it's the second worst book I've read this year. Most importantly. Wings Once Cursed and Bound, I gave 3 stars. I mean, it was okay. The world building was interesting. I think the real issue with this is it had at most a novella's worth of plot, and it tried to expand it into a full novel, and it did not do there was not enough to the plot to justify it. So it drags a lot, and the romance was just not great, and it wasn't the world is really interesting, and it was definitely trying to set up for a more expansive series. It just was too long for what it was. So again, I agree with this. My Education, I read this for a class on university fiction in the spring, and I actually enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I mean, it wasn't the best thing I've ever read, but for what it is, which is kind of exploring a lot of similar ideas to a lot of other university fiction, telling the kind of coming of age story of this graduate student, I thought it was interesting, and it was very well written. I'm not surprised to find it 4th on this list, but I'm also not entirely sure I agree with it. And then Scattered All Over the Earth, which is another book I read for school. Yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. This is another case where it was a really interesting world, like Wings Once Cursed and Bound. Although it was an interesting world in a different way, where it's this near future dystopian world. But it also has some weird magical realism something. I don't really know what's going on. Which was my main complaint with this book, is I don't know what was going on. It has interesting thoughts on translation and languages and cultural identity and such, but it was done in so confusing a way that it was difficult to understand what was going on, even if you understood the deeper themes and everything of the story. Which I think was kind of the point, but I didn't love it. And I'm assuming that's similar reasons for why this is this low. And then we have Better Than Fiction, which I gave 4 stars. And this was an okay contemporary book. I'm just double checking what this was about. Okay, yeah, this was a kind of cute, opposites attract, where it's following this woman who inherits a bookshop despite not liking books, and then she ends up befriending an author, and it's their romance. And it was really cute. I think I mostly gave it 4 stars because in comparison to other contemporary books I'd read around that time of the year in February, it was leagues better than them, although I think that was mostly just because they were not good. But yeah, it was fine. It was pretty decent. 3.42 stars seems a little low for it to get for me, but it is what it is. And then The Fixer-Upper, I gave 2.5 stars. I did not like this. It's about this woman who starts a service to like fix up men for their girlfriends or fiancés or wives or whoever. And then she ends up being hired to use her services on her childhood best friend. And it's just, I hate romances where one person is hiding something like completely fundamental to the entire relationship from the other person, because like the big blow up scene at the end always just seems so pointless. It's just not. I just hated this book. I truly despised it. I don't remember it that much because I read it 9 months ago, but I think there was there cheating? There's definitely emotional cheating. It was just not good, and the characters were all so one-dimensional, and I hated all of them. Like, I did not care about a single character in this book. I did not care about the plot. I thought they were all horrible and deserved what they got. Yeah, not a fan. This absolutely deserves to be this low on the list, and I'm surprised it's not lower. Juliet and the Romeos, I gave 3.5 stars. I got an E-arc of this. So yeah, this is basically following our main girl, Julieta. She's doing this prestigious writing program thing, but it's basically about this love square between her and like 3 boys. She also, for this writing program, she has to do a collaboration with another author, and she does that online with like someone she doesn't know the identity of, but she thinks it's one of 3 boys, and she's trying to figure out which of them it is. I don't like love triangles at the best of times, but a love square was too many love interests. Like, it was very mid-tier. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was a very average YA contemporary romance. Like, it wasn't horrible. And I think I did like the overall romance with the final love interest. It's just, there's nothing particularly good or compelling about it. Okay, the last 2 we'll talk about are 9 and 10. So Flip the Script. It's a romance between 2 K-drama co-stars, and it's like queer girl friends to lovers, and I really wanted to love this book. Oh, and I gave this 3.5 stars, so you should be 4 stars on goodreads. So yeah, I really wanted to love this book. I did like the main 2 characters. It's just, I felt there was not enough depth there. I didn't really care about like the plot lines outside of the romance. It was only okay. Like, I had very high hopes. I didn't think any of the characters or the plot were as complex as they should have been. I appreciate the sapphic flip on, like, the co-stars dating romance tropes, but it just, there's something about it that wasn't fully working for me. So I did give it 3.5 stars. Like Juliet and the Romeos, it's perfectly decent, but there's just, like, something there missing for me, and I'm not quite sure what it was. I do think if I liked K-drama, or if I like was a fan of K-dramas, then it probably would have appealed to me more, but I don't know. And then Bellegarde, it's a She's All That retelling set in 1700s Paris. I don't know if you can hear my dogs barking, but this just annoyed me so much because, like, it felt like reading a book set in the 90s, just with the veil of period costumes and a ball instead of prom or whatever. And I don't understand the point of setting something in this kind of like fun historical world of like balls and everything if you're not actually going to make use of the world and you're retelling the story. Like, the world needs to add something rather than just being a filter of, oh look, and She's All That with pretty dresses, you know? Like, it needed to be doing something. I was not doing that. So I gave this 3.5 stars too. To be honest, don't remember if I read this as an E-arc or not. I did talk about this in my July wrap-up, so you can go there to see more of my thoughts on it. So yes, those are the 10 worst books I read this year, according to Goodreads, and overall, I thought it was pretty fair. There are none of these where I'm like, this was a great book. Like, most of them I gave somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5 stars, which is all about where they're rated. So I'm okay with this. I think that's fine. Let's flip this and go to the highest rated books. Okay, I'm happy about this. So now it's time for highest rated books. First off, we've got, I'm probably gonna skip, we'll just talk about this and we'll see. First up is Kingdom of Ash, which is the last Throne of Glass book. I just read it like last week and absolutely adored it. It was amazing. I'll actually be talking about this in my 24-hour reading vlog, which should go up the day after this video, or the day after that. It's coming up in the coming days. So, you know, check that out if you're interested. But I thought this was an amazing conclusion to the series. I love Throne of Glass so much. I love all the characters. I just think it's amazing. And this is the only book I can remember that fully made me sob. Like, I was reading, there was one scene I was reading and I was on the plane coming home from winter break and I was actually crying on the plane. And it's kind of embarrassing, but it was... It was just heartbreaking, and it was... Throne of Glass is so good. If you like fantasy, if you like romantasy, really just read it. It's so good. And then we have Life in a Field poems, which I talked about in my October wrap-up, which I posted the other day. This is a poetry collection I read for class. I really liked it. I'm guessing the reason it's rated so high is it had very few ratings. Yeah, it only has 23 ratings, which will do it. You know, take that with a grain of salt. And then, to no one's surprise, we have Fourth Wing, which I did give 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Iron Flame, was meh. Iron Flame I gave 4 stars, but Fourth Wing, the first book, I think was really good. Was it the best quality thing I've ever read? No, but there's something in that book that just hooks you, and like I could not put it down, and I was reading it at a point where I really needed that. I don't know, I loved it. I loved the school setting. Like any sort of magical school setting I will happily read. It was just fun. Like Fourth Wing is just a good time. And then Empire Storms, Queen of Shadows, more Thorn and Glass books, more books I absolutely adore. 5 stars, would give 10 stars if I could. Yeah, I mean, I love these characters, and the series gets so good in the second half. You're seeing where all the character arcs are going, and it's just amazing. I think Queen of Shadows is my favorite Throne of Glass book, but like they're all so good. And then these Spy Family books, we'll talk about all together. I love Spy Family. It's a manga and an anime, and I just love it so much. It's so comforting. It makes me so happy. It's just like found family. I mean, it's like fake family in the way that like fake dating is fake dating, but it's also found family for that. It's just so fun and so cute, and I love it so much. And then Ballad of Never After, another of my favorite books of this year, is the second Once Upon a Broken Heart book. Like, I'm just seeing so many books I love on this list. It's just amazing. This is peak enemies to lovers. It's peak YA fantasy. If you love like books that feel like fairy tales, then read the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy because it's perfect. I read the 3rd book in this also this past week in my 24-hour reading challenge, like Kingdom of Ash and Iron Flame. It was still really good. It was a very good conclusion of the series, but Ballad of Never After is like peak enemies to lovers. It is so good. Then we have Winter the Witch, which was the other book I read in my reading the highest and lowest rated books in my TBR according to Goodreads challenge. Another book that's perfect if you like fairy tale type stories, where there's just such a lovely like wintry trilogy, and it's set in Russia, and it's kind of at the intersection of like traditional beliefs and Christianity, and it's kind of dealing with that conflict. And it's just so wonderful, and Vasya, the main character, is amazing, and it's so wonderful. You see her grow from, she's quite young at the start of the 1st book, and you see her growing and blossoming to like her full powers as she like reaches adulthood by like the end of the 3rd, coming into her own and into her birthright, and it's just so good. This is an absolutely perfect trilogy. Like, I think I probably love Once Upon a Broken Heart and Throne of Glass more, but they're not perfect, whereas the Winter Night trilogy is perfect. It's just so good. And then let's count. I'm not going to count the poetry books or Spy Family or Queen of Shadows because that's a reread. 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay, 5 more books. There are a lot of rereads on this list. Okay, we'll see. The Final Empire, which is the first Mistborn book. It was my first Cosmere book, and it's amazing. It is so good. This is like adult fantasy Six of Crows, but like better. Where it takes a lot for me to say something is better than Six of Crows, but this is better. Like the magic system is more interesting. The world is more interesting. The twists and heist and everything are more compelling. And I mean, like, the romance isn't as good, and like the characters are slightly less of a focus, but it's so good. I don't know, I really need to read the rest of this trilogy soon. It's basically a fantasy series that's asking what if the Chosen One failed. It's taking place centuries after that happened, and dealing with kind of the aftermath of that for the society. It's so good. I need to read the rest of this trilogy. That's a big goal for like the first part of 2024 for me, I think. One Piece, good, but I'm not talking about manga. Airfire is a reread. Just Lizzie. I talked about this in my October wrap-up, so you can check that out. This is a middle grade book about a girl discovering asexuality and realizing she thinks she's asexual. It's just like a really lovely introduction to the concept, and I'm just like so happy this book exists, and I think it'll be so helpful for so many like middle schoolers. I'm so happy this book exists. I think I give it 4.5 stars, but it's so good. And then Chain of Iron was a reread. Iron Flame, I mentioned this earlier. I give it 4 stars. I think it probably shouldn't be rated as highly as some of the other things on this list. Like, it was decent. It was very fun fantasy. It was good vibes. It's just, it needed more runs of editing, where the first part dragged on for way too long and had no plot, whereas the second part, the plot was way too compressed, and it just needed a lot more balance there. And I wasn't a fan of the ending, but we'll see what happens when the 3rd book comes out. More manga we're skipping. Although I'll take a brief moment to talk about Orange, because I did finish that this year. It's just a really lovely manga. It has a little bit of time travel, but it's about this group of friends who get letters from their future selves telling them they have to take certain actions in order to save one of their other friends. And it's just this like really lovely, heartbreaking story about friendship. It's just lovely. If you're gonna read it, definitely read the trigger warnings, but it's just beautiful, and it's not that long, and it's so good. So 2 more books to talk about. Reread. Kingdom of Flesh and Fire should not be this high up here. I'm sorry. I'm not sure what I actually gave it. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. Yeah, I gave it 4.5 stars. Where From Blood and Ash is a little like Fourth Wing, and then it has a very addictive quality despite not being like the best written thing ever. But I think Fourth Wing is more addictive. From Blood and Ash, not so much. But I did binge read the first 3 from Blood and Ash books in like April through May, where I think the 3rd book was actually not good. The 2nd book, I was still like, this has the potential to turn into a really good fantasy series, where it's fun. I enjoyed it. The romance is fun, and it's like, the first 2 books were a good time, but this is definitely not the 9th best book I read in 2023. Like, it's just not. I do think my 4.5 star rating was generous. I think it should be 4 stars at most. I was also not having a good time in the spring, so like anything that brought me joy, I was willing to overlook flaws, you know? And then last book on this list is The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which I give 4 stars. This is another book where this should not be this high on the list. Or as far as YA new adult fantasy goes, where it's new adult because of the romance, but it's YA, it feels YA in the plot. It's not horrible. Like, it's kind of compelling competition set in like a vampire world, and like it's kind of interesting. It was fun and I enjoyed reading it, and like it kept me invested. It's just, I would not give it more than 4 stars. Like, I don't think the world building was interesting enough. I don't think the romance was interesting enough. I don't think any of it was compelling enough for that. Like, I'm interested to see where the 2nd book goes. I do want to read that at some point, but it's not the 10th best book I read this year. There's a brief moment there where I thought I wasn't screen recording, but I was, so we're okay. So yeah, those are my top 10 best and worst books I read this year according to Goodreads. I'd say, like, overall I did agree with it mostly, with a couple of exceptions like Iron Flame and Serpent and the Wings of Night, where like I still thought they were pretty good books. I just don't think they should be in like top 10 books I read this year, you know? Yeah, overall I did find I agreed with them a lot. Like, again, I generally find that Goodreads reviews tend to be relatively reliable on like the top end and the lower end. It's in the middle where I tend to disagree with them a lot. Like the middle of what Goodreads thinks is middle range, where like there'll be books I think that are 5 stars that Goodreads thinks are like perfectly average, and there'll be books I think are like 2 stars that Goodreads thinks are perfectly average. So like I'm not super surprised by agreeing mostly with these rankings. But yeah, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video if you're still here. I really appreciate it. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. I'm currently doing bookmas, so this was day 4, I think. So I'll be doing 8 more videos in the days leading up to Christmas. And yeah, you can find me on my blog, Instagram, Goodreads Storygraph at the links on my channel. And yeah, thanks again for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you later.